As a kid, I loved the smell of channel water taken from the Murray River to irrigate the sultana vines on my grandfather's fruit block at Redcliffs in the Sunraysia. In those days, watering the vines involved lots of ingenious shovel work, and when I was a little kid, I loved watching my grandfather making trenches in the red soil to direct the flow of water between the vines. Open irrigation channels snaked all across the Sunraysia, supporting a contrived green landscape of vines and citrus. My sister and I swam in the channel when we were kids, but my grandmother was always petrified that we'd drown, so my grandfather built us a pool where we could swim all summer long, closer to the security of the house. I spent the first year of my life at Redcliffs, learning to walk amongst the fruit drying racks and being taken to the river for my first aquatic experiences. After we moved away, I'd come back every school holidays, helping my grandfather drive the Fergie tractor up and down the rows of vines, and never getting in trouble even when I knocked over the occasional strainer post. I loved the long days of summer, animated by the excitement of the fruit harvest, my grandfather's big shady garden and the swimming pool. These were summers made bearable by the seemingly abundant waters of the Murray River. My grandfather took up a soldier settlers block at Redcliffs when he returned from the First World War, and then developed it as part of a new irrigation scheme. He cleared the melly, ploughed the ground, planted sultana vines, and then built a house that he took my grandmother to when they married in 1929. My grandmother was born in the Sunraysia and grew up at nearby Kings Billabong, where her father had had the good fortune to stake a claim back in the pioneering days of the Chaffey brothers, as the Sunraysia irrigation colony first materialised. Sometimes, as we grow up, the most important places of our childhood become like a foreign country. When my grandfather became too old to continue farming, he sold the fruit block and moved into town. The people who bought the place immediately pulled out most of the big trees in the garden and then removed all the sultana vines planted in the front part of the block. The horticultural industry was changing, and the dried fruit industry in particular was in decline. Fast forward a quarter century, and we're heading out to the Redcliffs Pioneer Cemetery to bury my 104-year-old grandmother. Rationalisation of the water market and a long period of drought had created a landscape where half the fruit blocks seemed to have disappeared, with vines and citrus groves bulldozed and water sold off. I'm struck by the way in which the span of my grandmother's life seems to have mirrored the lifespan of the small irrigated fruit blocks that were once the basis of the society and economy in this part of the world. The European history of many parts of this country is really so brief. Sunraysia was still in its infancy when my grandmother was born, with irrigation channels being dug and dreams afoot of water being turned into gold. My family enjoys a modest legacy of inherited wealth that comes from the now disappeared sultana vines and from the irrigation waters of the Murray River. But, at least in the Sunraysia, the days of hand-dug irrigation trenches seem to be over, and the small fruit blocks seem to have made way for corporate wineries and other large-scale irrigators. I'm indebted to the river, but I'm also lamenting the loss of a landscape and a life that is disappearing.